Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Real Talk Food Safety with Jill and Tia.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad that you are here with us, and we do have a very special guest today.
We do. So Rima is here, and we're going to introduce Rima in just a moment because we want to also find out where are you calling in from? What part of the world are you in? What's the weather like? We love hearing from you because that's what makes this all work for us.
Yes, and we do put all of our videos up on YouTube, so you could be watching the replay. So if you are, please put in where you're listening in from and hashtag replay so we'll know that you went back and watched the replay. And we do go back and look at the comments. So if you add comments, if you're adding your questions and we don't get to it today, we will go back and take a look at them.
Yes, we will. And of course, all of this is because we like to bring real topics that we talk about, kind of I'm going to say behind the scenes or in small groups, but bring it here for you, our audience, because this is how we get better together. Yeah. And so we love when you share comments or ask questions and add to the conversation through the comments as they come in. So
absolutely. And we learn things as we have these conversations, and we see your perspective and we hear your questions. Sometimes it just gives us something different to think about. And that's why we started doing Real Talk Food Safety, is because we wanted to have these conversations along with you so that, like Jill said, we're better together. We're growing, we're learning, we're sharing best practices. That's what this is all about.
Yeah. So we're here every Wednesday at noon Eastern. And today we are excited for our guest.
Yes, we are. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. This is Real Talk Food Safety. I am Tia, and Jill is my wonderful partner. And we focus on developing and growing technical leaders and teams, helping organizations and leaders like you build food safety and quality cultures, sustainable food safety and quality cultures within the food and beverage industry. And that's so important for us, the sustainable piece, because we all know we write a policy, we roll it out, we talk about these things. But if it is not sustainable, real change is not going to happen. Nope. So that's what we talk about here. And we bring lovely guests on as well from time to time to give their perspective. So yeah, without further ado, let's introduce Rima.
Yes. Well, Rima, as we get started, I think about food safety leaders are often our unsung heroes making things happen behind the scenes. Sure. And when we first met, I thought, you are making such a huge impact with your team and at UNFI. And so we are really honored and so grateful to have you on today.
We are.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I am super excited. I've joined some of these real talks in the past, and I really have learned a lot. And it's just great to keep the network alive with food safety and help each other. And the more that we can share our stories, the more that we can work collectively together to bring a better, safer food safety culture across the world. So Thank you for letting me be part of this today.
Thank you for being here.
So happy to have you here. So Rima, for people who haven't met you yet, do you mind sharing a little bit about yourself and maybe how you got into food?
Yeah, sounds good. Well, I'm going to start more on the personal side. So I am Rima Kapadia, and I live in Minnesota. I've been in Minnesota for about 16 and a half years. I'm originally born and raised in Massachusetts. So for any of my East Coast friends that are on today, hello. But I really, I'm married for the last 16 years, hence why I moved out to Minnesota. My husband brought me out here, and we have two beautiful children. I have an 11-and-a-half-year-old and a 5-year-and-a-half-old, so a girl and a boy. So they consume a lot of my energy, but honestly, they have taught me so much about the world and to think outside the box. So from a career perspective, I've been with UNFI for now 8.5 years, and I have got to see lots of transitions over the years and for the better. So really excited to be part, and I head up the food safety division and quality assurance. And we've seen transitions. Initially, I came, as some of you might know, from the super value side that was based in Minnesota, and got to see the company grow. We had acquired various companies, and then we merged with UNFI Natural, and now we are this one big company. And the nice thing about my role in food safety is I actually get to see the entire supply chain. So we have a little bit of manufacturing. We do a lot of work with suppliers. And then we have our own retail stores. We have our own DC operations. And then we work directly with a lot of our customers. And having the breadth of it, we really get to see the whole picture and how different events really help drive improvement across the supply chain. And we're not just focused on one area. So I really appreciate that. Prior to that, I actually worked for Target. I was in the private brands division there. Initially started in my weak spot when it comes to food, snacks, which was basically all the junk food that you like, chips and fruit.
Right.
Sorry, Rima, that was funny. I thought you were saying weak spot, like for me, like food fraud isn't my area.
No.
But you're like snacks. I'm like, oh, I like that weak spot.
It's a weak spot for me because I can't stop eating them.
I know. Well, when you're surrounded by all those good products, it's really hard. And when you have to do the taste testing, I'm like, oh my God. And then eventually got into a little bit more overall programs from food safety. Prior to that, I worked for Land O'Lakes, and I started off more in the testing side of things and grew into more of a food safety role. And my last role there was into contract manufacturing, which was an opportunity for me to travel the nation, meet with a lot of various manufacturing locations, and felt like that was like a breadth of a lot of my analytical skills and manufacturing basis that I had got. And then my first role out of my master's program was actually for Cargill out here, and I was a microbiologist. So I actually ran the microbiology lab there and got to work with various animals. There was a farm base there, so I got to learn a lot from that perspective too. So as you can see from my breadth of my background, I started more from an analytical, then went to more of the auditing type of role, then went into brands. And now through this UNFI role, really have the breadth of everything. So that experience has been really valuable for me because I've got to see all different angles from the start to the finish. It's been an honor. And then one piece of information I always like to share is probably what's helped me in my career the most is my background from my childhood. So my parents have just retired, and they just completed 40 years of owning our convenience stores and liquor store. At one point, it was even a video store. So I grew up in retail, and I was working behind the register. My claim to fame was 8 years old. My mom had to go deliver my baby sister, and I knew how to run the whole store. And they just had an adult figure next to me because I knew how to give cash back, right? So
that's awesome.
But that really also gave me that independent retailer experience where I got the breadth of the entire business, not just food safety. So that really has helped me think outside the box of in my role of food safety of what does the end consumer see? Because having that interaction with that day-to-day customer, you really learn a lot as well.
Yeah. I love your story because you have been everywhere throughout food safety. And when, today and throughout this month, we're really talking about leadership mindset. And you have been able to lead in many different areas that many of our listeners are in, right? And they're trying to figure out, how do I be a leader in this space? Or how do I take what I've learned here and be a leader in a space that might be a little weak for me or might be something new for me. You even talked about like going into snacks. So we're super excited about you being here and learning from you and your experience because it's so amazing.
Yes. And, as we go, I just want to do a shout out like, hi, Maggie, and hi, Kimberly. It's nice to see you and have you be with us today. If you have any questions for Rima or any comments, drop them in the comment because we would love to be able to have your voice in here as well. So
yes.
Hey, so Rima, it's only been actually a few months since I'm going to say kind of met, and I do air quotes because it was at the for Women in Food Safety gathering a few months ago. And one of the things that really struck me as you were leading the gathering was just how much, like, I could feel like your heart coming through as you talked about your story and your team. And I think why it really stood out to me is I think there's this, the old stereotype of about how we're supposed to lead and what that's supposed to look like, and kind of that, that old stereotype. But you certainly didn't bring that. And I was really impressed with that. And so I'm kind of curious, like, did you intentionally bring that in as you were leading, or is that just something that like comes naturally to you?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. I think the heart really comes through my experience. And I think it started working in my parents' store and seeing the impact. So my parents were in the heart of Lowell City in Massachusetts, and we really served a lot of different communities. And honestly, like to this day, when I go back home to visit my parents, I have many of those same customers that come and visit and want to see my kids. So there was that family impact that we were not only just their retailer, but we were also an extension to their family, where they came to get their roses for their, for their special events, or taking their kids to get ice cream. So there was that warmth. And I think that seeing that and growing up in something like that has really helped me understand what impact just a small one person can have to a community. And I mean, even though we had the name of the store was Village Variety, but they just called it Paul's and Rita's. Like that was like my parents' name that they would call and refer the store to. I think the other piece of my heart, as I had mentioned in my introduction on my personal side, is becoming a mom, and where food safety is such an important thing, as I mean, in general, but I think it really hits home when you start feeding your own family and you're like, okay, am I feeding them the right food? Are they going to have a reaction, or is this going to make them sick? So I think that in itself has also made me have the heart. And that's what I try to express in my leadership, or as I'm talking to locations that I meet, is how would you feel about working here and taking that feedback to your dinner table, right? So, and understanding and having that why, leading by example, that really helps. So it is, I guess you can say, it's part of my nature, it's part of who I am, to bring my full self in no matter what. So you'll get to see the good, bad, and ugly. So, I mean, I think I'm an open book. If you were to ask any of my team members, they'll tell you, oh, I know everything about Rima, because I just bring myself to work.
I love that, bringing your full self to work.
Yes.
That's something that we have talked about on here a little bit. There's people, I know a lot of cultures say that, like, bring your whole self to work. We want you to bring your whole self to work. Has there been times in your career that you struggled with that, or maybe even gotten some pushback on who you are?
Yeah, and that's another great question. These are good questions. So I would say I have, as you can see, I'm also a woman. I'm a diverse leader, and sometimes that could have its challenges. But what I have done, and as I've learned in my career, is stand up, speak up, support. So outside of food safety, I'm also part of UNFI's Diversity Council. I head up the Women's Network with our CMO. So it's just exciting to have being part of those types of things to make sure people feel comfortable. And being on this Real Talk, that's why it's awesome and amazing that I get to be part of this, is by hearing other stories, it sometimes could help in your journey and the struggles that you might be facing, knowing that you're not the only one. And there's going to be times, but those times that are tough, just work through it, keep your head down, do what you need to do whether if you're in a food safety role or a different role, do what you need to do and what's your end goal from for the company and for the brand. And that's going to take you places, and making sure that you're not just sitting there quietly. If there are challenges, speak up about it, talk about it. But my suggestion would also be, when you speak up, try to bring solutions to the table as well.
Yes. So being really sure of yourself and knowing who you are, because when someone challenges you, you know who you are. You know who you are as a person. You understand your strengths, your opportunities, so that when you do speak up, you have those facts on the subject, but then also on yourself. I love that. I love that.
Yeah. And Rima, I think that's so important because I think when, what I see often, and, I did this as well, I'd come into a new role and really focused on what were their expectations of me. Yeah. And I think it really helps for us to advocate for ourselves because it's okay for us to have expectations as well.
Yes.
And understand what helps us be our best in our role versus just only looking for what's expected of us. Yes, and I think that really kind of sets that partnership. So I love how you've talked about staying true and grounded in that and how that helps guide you.
Yeah.
Very much.
It's key. It's key to stay true and share, whether it's, the open book. I mean, it's okay to share what's going on outside of your world too, because again, it brings the why, it brings the heart into what you do on a daily basis.
Right, which is so important, right? In influential, we talk a lot around influence being a huge piece of culture, and being able to influence the organization and having that heart, having that, that drive, is so important to be influential in food safety and outside to other functions.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Kimberly, thank you for the feedback. I'm at a public area. You might be able to tell. So hopefully I'll mute myself in between and hopefully that will cut down on background noise. So if you have any feedback, if it's getting better when I'm off, let me know. So Rima, I'm curious because, you talked a little bit about kind of the background with, working in your parents' convenience store and kind of along this path, and how that kind of helped shape your leadership style. Was there like anything in particular outside of that, or anybody that kind of helped you shape your leadership style even further?
I would say that every company or every role or every leader or manager really has shaped me. So I give a lot of credit to all of the leaders that I've had in my life and current as well to kind of think outside of the box, think differently. And I've had various, food safety, as we all know, reports in different areas. And I've got to have the breadth of where that reports to. So I have learned different things when I started my role more on how to be a better analytical thinker, a problem solver, how to be more of a manufacturing and understanding the technical side of things. Then as I kind of grew in my career, how to have more of those business savvy skills, how to have those customer relationships. And each of those leaders that I've had have provided that guidance. I reported into the legal department for quite some time. So I feel like I also picked up some legal skills in that time as well. And now, and just partnering with my current operational partners. So I would just say that take every moment and feedback that you receive from whether it's good or bad, and take that to heart and do something, improve on what your strengths are. And then don't feel bad if you get some critical feedback, because that's what's going to help you grow. And it's things that you might have not noticed yourself. So, So I don't have one person. I really have to say there's been a lot of people in my life that have sculpted who I am as a leader today.
Yeah. Yeah. And I completely understand that, because you can always learn from people in your circle or even from your managers. You know, there's times where I'm talking to people and they're like, man, I just do not like the way my manager leads. They don't remove barriers from me. They're always creating conflict. But even that is a learning opportunity to say, this is how I would not lead in that situation. This is how I would lead if I was in that situation. And it even gives you an opportunity for you to own where you are, and really manage up, right? Like we kind of talk about that a little bit, help you manage up and help even be a leader to your manager.
Well, and I would also take it even if you're a leader yourself and you have a team that reports to you, or you are a mentor and you have mentees that you discuss things, you learn a lot from those individuals as well. Sometimes the best critical feedback that I get is from my own team. Is like, Rima, maybe we should do this, And I love it when they come to me and say, we need to think differently. Maybe this is not going to work, because you learn something too. And hopefully you create that relationship with whoever it is, higher up, peer level, or a direct report, that people feel comfortable to come and be transparent and honest, because it's those transparent discussions that really help drive change.
Right. So, yeah. Yes, absolutely. So you talked about how you started as a microbiologist, and you really learned the technical side of things, like even as you were growing in your career. And then once you got to a certain point, you really needed to learn how to be more business savvy. And we always talk about, we find that a lot of technical experts, they really stay in this technical field, and then they try to be leaders without thinking that they need to be technical leaders as well, and think about leadership and having that leadership mindset, and really do some of the things that you're talking about, connecting with your team, leading with heart, taking those technical pieces and applying them so you can lead through others, right? So we're curious, what have you seen was the hardest transition as you've gone from being a technical expert to moving more into a leadership type role?
Well, I think it's building your credibility. So that technical experience is so valuable, whether it's technical, being a microbiologist and or knowing the business, understanding the operations. It is so key that, wherever you are in your career, and if you're changing a role or you're adding a new sector under your belt, is really understanding the details about it, because that technical experience is what really helps you build those bridges into the business world. Because now then you take that information and the technicals, how do you translate it into layman terms so that other people that might not be food safety experts can actually talk and understand and see how it impacts them as well, right? So I would say the biggest challenge or thing that you would need to do to get into more of that business role is building those relationships. Taking the time of understanding what are their challenges, not just focus on your own food safety challenges, but what are the other challenges of, say, operations and or your customers, and understanding that's where you can then come back, bring problems, solutions to the problems that you have to the table. So, but that takes time. To translate it from a science perspective to more of a business perspective, and then building those relationships and making sure that you have that seat at the table as a technical expert as well.
Yes, it takes time. That's so important. It takes time. Culture is not built overnight. It really takes, years to build the type of culture that you want to see, depending on your starting point.
And there's always room for improvement. Even if you feel like you have a good culture, things are changing, times are changing, products are changing. People are changing within the organization. So you still have to always keep a pulse on that culture piece.
Absolutely.
Gosh. Well, and we know, there's such a focus on food safety culture. And, I think there's still some discussion around, like, are technical experts able, ready, willing to lead food safety culture and to help go in that space? And that really makes me wonder, Rima, especially as you've had so many experiences. And I see us making progress. Do you see us as technical experts making enough progress and meaningful progress to transition to technical leaders so that we can really support food safety culture the way we need to?
I would say in my years of being in the food safety realm, that initially I felt like we maybe had a backseat, or we were behind the scenes and it was more of a reactive, where I really do genuinely feel that, having discussions like this today, that we are now asked to be at the table and part of the discussion. So an example of how my food safety team within my organization is, as we're building new facilities or we're onboarding new customers or we're developing new products, we're there at the same time as the business team. And we're thinking outside the box, trying to see how can we prevent food safety failures and how can we prevent this product not going well in the market. So from a quality perspective, so that really helps to be part of those. But again, in order to get there is that you have to make sure you're building those relationships and educating people on food safety and creating that culture that it is a pillar. It is part of, as a food company, it is a pillar that we need to be part of those discussions, because you could put all this money into it, but if you don't think outside of that particular food safety, whether it's safety or product development, it's important that you have that cross-functional team. So Jill, to your question, I do really feel like we're making a lot more progress around that. It's probably, I see it in the company that I'm at, and again, it's the education and making sure that you have those partners there, and that's what continues, and hence why I've been with the company for so long too, is creating that culture and driving.
Yeah. I think your answers also goes to what Kimberly was asking around, what are many ways that businesses can promote, prevent, and protect public health, right? And really, when you talk about that prevention of integration of food safety and quality into work systems, that's something that we talk about all the time at Catalyst, and we help our clients do is how do they incorporate food safety in product development, in sales, in marketing, in all the work streams that they have. Food safety should have a place at the table. And there should be a process, right? Even when food safety is not there, so that people throughout the organization is talking about food safety before product hits the marketplace or before ingredients arrive to the facility, right? Like, it's all these steps that you can do before to prevent, right? So I think that falls right in line on what Kimberly was asking there. Do you have anything to add around how businesses can promote, prevent, and protect?
This is where we can utilize our technical skills. We are really good at building SOPs and processes as food safety professionals. This is where you get that cross-functional team to the table and say, all right, we need to put a process together. So just let's take supplier management as an example. You get the group together and you say, okay, how are we going to onboard a new supplier, or how are we going to review our suppliers? We need to make sure that they understand that there should be stage gates, right? That food safety is approving the various aspects around whether or not they've been certified or that they have submitted their HACCP plan. Those things, and explaining the importance of that. Right. Once you have that process developed, that's where you're part of the discussion. You have to have that tough discussion at first. And then you might have to take initiative and say, hey, let's put an SOP together so that we're all aligned, so that, again, a culture perspective, if down the road somebody pushes back and says, hey, we need to get this product out the market, wait a second, you have a document then to really help and say, this is what we've talked about. If we need to modify it, let's modify it and talk through it. A process, as we know, it's always in draft mode when it comes to food safety with all the changes that we encounter. But that really does help, is having that process as well as those discussions to make sure people understand.
Right, exactly. I love that. And then the promote piece, I love what you said earlier on communication, bringing your technical communication and translating it into a way that other people can understand. And that's all about promotion, right? Making sure that public health can understand food safety and understand what to look for, understand how to manage food in their household. Like right before the episode, we were all talking and we were talking about food safety just in our households, and like, when should you not eat that pizza that's there all night, right? Like, making sure that our families understand that, that's all about promoting, food safety, preventing issues, and then ultimately protecting. That was a great question, Kimberly.
It is. And Tia knows I'm a huge Brene Brown fan, and I always think about clear is kind. And had I had more awareness of that earlier in my career, I would be floored to have new conversations now, because I think I felt this pressure that as the technical expert, I had to commute kind of technically and give more details. And now I think, oh no, they just need high level. If they need more details, they'll come back in some situations. But if we get too technical, people kind of tune us out. And so how to come and be relatable and how to sit in and really be at the table to help with that promoting.
Yeah. I'm going to add too, another thing that's really been successful for myself, for my team, is that boots on the ground with your business partners. letting them see it through your eyes. So whether you're walking a store, and it can be small or big, of a location, and just letting them see what you look at, and what concerns you, and then also at the same time what concerns them, because then that's where you can maybe connect the dots that, okay, we're delayed in getting product out the door, but what can we do then to help and make that process more efficient? Right. So those are the things, like, I learn every time I walk with a new person, something new, and I hope that we could do the same thing. And then that also, if you come on that same page, it really helps build that culture as well.
Right. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Take your friends along for the ride.
Yeah.
Well, and that's so big, because when we talk about culture and, you know, even building that team, right, that's the foundation, is really kind of that trust and belonging. And
That's
so
right.
when we can say, right, we want to help solve problems, and we build that trust, and like that's huge. That's money in the bank.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And, you know, Maggie asked the question around, you know, what are the steps to follow to achieve a great food safety culture in a small business? It's some of the things that you're talking about around building those relationships, making sure that you have those conversations, you're listening to your teams. I also like it too when you said, every time I go on a walk with someone new, I learn something different. Yep. So it's like you're doing the same walk. You're most likely asking the same questions, but you're getting a different perspective that helps you piece together, what type of culture do we have? And what insights and perspectives can you get from this person that's living it every day to make the culture better?
Well, and then on the small business piece, a lot of the small business, speaking from my personal experience, are usually more run like a family type of business as well. So how do you get yourself part of that family, and understanding their why, their purpose, and what is their end goal, and how do you feed that food safety culture into that end goal? That's key too. So again, it goes back to that relationship and seeing what they're seeing, and then speaking up to what you're seeing and what you feel is also necessary, and having that as part of one value.
Yeah. And then we work a lot with small businesses, and what we've noticed is that, you know, you have to work in a phased approach because they don't have unlimited resources. You know, they are trying to become a medium-sized business, right? So they're trying to reinvest funds back into their organization. But for us, is really helping them understand the importance of food safety and the risk on their business, and then helping them understand the top risk for their business. And then that helps them be able to make a better decision, which ultimately leads into the culture piece. And then helping them understand, Rima, exactly what you said earlier, that it takes time. You're not going to be able to build a full food safety system, even much less a culture, when you have nothing today and you want it in 3 months. It's impossible to do that, right? Otherwise, none of us will have jobs, right? Because we continue to have jobs year over year at the same company, working with the same people, right? And so we know that it takes time to build these things, even at a baseline, and then to continuously improve as we learn more, as processes change, as we introduce new products, as we change people, even because people is a huge part of culture. And your culture could shift if the CEO change, or if your plant manager change, or even if lab technicians change, right? The culture of those teams may also change.
Well, and I would say to that too, don't get devastated if you can't, if it's not happening right away, or you don't have the resources. Again, think differently, think creatively. I mean, I know there were parts in my time of my career where I didn't even have a team, and it was just myself. And how do you go about just putting a culture out? That, again, going back to the relationships, leveraging people that are outside of your team and saying, hey, do you mind just making sure the doors are closed? Or can you make sure that the products are being stored correctly? And utilizing the resources that are already there, and just having them take tidbits of the food safety culture and being part of that. So don't feel like, you might not have the team or the structure or the resources or the fancy technology. There's still ways around how you can build that with what resources you may have. But then at the same time, leverage these types of meetings, and so that you can learn what other companies are doing. There's consultants out there. There's a lot of free webinars out there. FDA, make friends with your FDA or USDA partners because they could help too. Sometimes I know it's scary to be calling, the inspectors and asking them for help. But if you bring them when you have an issue and you bring them into the issue and you work together collectively and say, okay, this is where we're at, utilize them as a resource. So there's a lot of people might not have it within your particular location, but that you can leverage within the food safety world. And as many people, as you probably have heard, food safety is not a competitive advantage necessarily, right? So they're more likely to have more discussions around food safety, and people in the end want to work together, even if you're a competition, because if one company has an issue, that same company is going to be impacted by it too. So keep the communication lines. Don't get devastated. Even if you've been in the food safety culture and you have an amazing team, there's always going to be something new that happens, right? Like COVID has probably taught that to us, and the impacts of something that we never, could have imagined, and the impacts that had brought on from a food safety perspective. So you're always going to be learning and leverage those partnerships that you've built over your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rima, as you talk about like building the relationships and leveraging that and looking at ways of how you think differently, that brings up a question that I have. And I know we didn't talk about this earlier, but one of the things that Tia and I notice and that we try to talk a lot about is, as our roles change. And for example, as you've kind of shifted, as you've moved roles and have more leadership, more management and creating vision for your organization, I'm just curious for kind of how is your work kind of shifted as well? Because one of the things that sometimes we see is that because we grew up and we're technical experts, we're very much focused on like doing tasks. Like, I need to get this report done. I need to do this. I need to check the list. I need to make a new SOP. And shifting to, I need to take care of my team. And what does that look like? I'm curious if that's something you could share with our audience on maybe what you've noticed or how you've shifted to be able to do that a little bit differently, to be such a wonderful leader.
Well, thank you for that. Yes, I wish I was doing, as you grow it, and I've seen and growing in my career, sometimes you don't do as much of the technical and you leverage the individuals that are more on the technical side. But again, I still try to make it a priority to get there, because if you get so swept into the business side of things, you're going to lose touch of what's going on. So I also make it a point that I'm boots on the ground, going out, just being, going back to my auditing days and just taking on that experience and hearing from people, talking to people. So it's really important to do that. But at the same time, now in this role, my biggest challenge is always being that voice for my team, being the voice for food safety, being the voice for the company, and protecting that brand. So there's a lot more probably education or customer involvement and helping them understand things or strategies and how we can improve. So yes, things are working right now, but we need to be not just one step, a few steps ahead of the game. And how do we overcome things that we haven't planned yet? So there's a lot more around that, but in order to do that strategy, you really need to be still close to that technical. So honestly, as much as it's probably different in maybe other roles, but from a food safety perspective, it is important to have that technical knowledge and make that time for that. But at the same time, making sure that you're also getting involved in understanding and being part and presence of what is the company's direction, where are we going, how can we help grow the business, and be a partner with that as well. And then taking that back to my technical team and saying, okay, this is what we have, so let's build off of that, so that we can help that next step. Well.
Yes, I love that, because we know that in order to have a sustainable food safety culture, we have to have those technical experts as well as those technical leaders. And so building those technical skills and keeping those technical skills fresh is just as important as building those leadership those leadership skills. And what we find is that we can grasp the technical piece because we've gone through school, we've done it throughout our career. It's that switch over into leadership. Sometimes people are trying to hold on to the technical piece while they're being leaders. But we do also see leaders who try to take a full hands-off approach, where it's like they're only focused on business objectives when you also have to have that technical strength. And that's really what makes it food safety culture, right? Yes, where you have that food safety technical skill as well as that culture leadership skill.
That absolutely. And making sure that another thing is by having that technical experience and relevant technical experience, you can then bring better solutions to the questions or the strategies that are being laid out by the company. Right. And that's where you build that credibility, is that you come and it's not just listening in or just taking back what they're saying, but actually saying, okay, this is great. How about we consider this? And again, speaking up and providing some of those, because there might be something that they didn't think of, or vice versa. They thought of something that we didn't think of. So being a good listener and then also providing that feedback.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about food safety culture. Obviously that is the thing that's the buzzword in today's world, right? In food safety. And it's so important because, I always say, like, food safety people, we've always talked about food safety culture. We've talked about it in different ways, right? And maybe it wasn't the buzzword food safety culture, but we've always talked about, hey, we need to be a part of the team. It must be a cross-functional team that we're working with. We need all sides of the organization. We need to be in those conversations and in those processes. What are some other things as you look to lead the food safety culture where you are, as well as influence the industry? What do you wish leaders in our field would know or do differently to drive food safety culture?
Again, it goes back to that partnership, but I'm also thinking more, I'm going back to my technical thing, is that many of our sites now across the nation or across the world are taking on food safety certifications, whether it's GFSI through SQF or BRC. But that first part, management commitment, a way to change that culture is getting that commitment. And where I have seen failures in my career from auditing to is when you don't have that management commitment and that culture. And I love how now most of the new codes now have that culture piece of it, because if you can even be in your infancy stages of building a food safety culture, but if the heart and the goal and everybody cares about, that really helps. So I would encourage teams to take that as, hey, we need to get certified because the customer wants us, but this will help bridge that that culture and drive that success as well. So that's one piece that I think would help to continue, is to get them involved, get other people involved. Don't just because you're the food safety professional feel like you have to take all of this on your own. It is supposed to be, in a food industry, everybody owns food safety. Every job, there's a piece of that. So taking that on and educating, that really will help. And I would encourage leaders to, utilize that as a tool in your toolkit. Is here's what's listed. Let's use it, and that's what's going to help us be successful.
Right, and not just check the box, right? But more like making sure your management team is involved, making sure you and others at your level is involved.
And Rima, I like how you talked about, like, even as the food safety, the technical expert or the leader in that area, like, we still need to talk about it, because we know, and I love how you talked about, like, we need to be patient because it will take time, but yet people, like, they love to be inspired, even if we say, we don't. But you know what? That is the thing that helps spark that influence and that commitment. And so I always think, as food safety leaders, how can we, like, draw that out of ourselves more and talk about this vision of what we have and how food safety can be, so that others can start going, oh, and what about this? And what about when we do this? And then they start having that buy-in that we talk about, because we have that shared vision. And that's really what drives to the commitment, isn't it?
Yes, I agreed. And
versus,
that inspiration,
yeah, versus you must do this.
Yes,
Right.
And that is definitely when you say you must do that, that's not going to help you be successful at all. You need to show it's okay to be calling things out, but the way that you do it, you need to make sure that they feel like you're actually there to help them. Utilize third-party companies to tell them that this is how you should do it, but you within your organization, you should be more of that partner and facilitate those discussions. And you know, if you call something out, hey, this rack doesn't look right, then provide feedback, provide a solution. Have you maybe thought of doing this? Hey, I've seen this at the previous location. Maybe we could consider this, and help them feel that they shouldn't feel like, okay, I have this laundry list of things now that I have to do after Rima's visit. It should be more like, okay, I have this laundry list, but I have some potential thoughts and recommendations of how we can go about it. And also think of it from a cost perspective as well. Like, what can we do and be smart and help the bottom line as well? Because there are things, it would be nice if we could have like these beautiful machines everywhere to help with like sanitation or cleaning or, but at the same time, with what you have, what can you do with that?
Right. Yeah. I like to think about it where, you know, I might put up some guardrails and say that, you know, the law says this, right? Like company policy says this. We can play anywhere in between this. We just have to get creative enough that it works for us. And so that turns on that light bulb of, okay, I know where I can play in. How can I make this work for me versus saying you have to do it this way? Most of the time, you don't have to do it a certain way. There's only a small amount of things that's like, no, you have to do it this way in order to be compliant. It's like pasteurization. We've been talking about heating, right? And killing microorganisms, Jill and I. So that's like on top of mind. But like pasteurization, there's a way, right? And you have to do it this way. And that's just the way it is. But there's so many other things that you can put up some guardrails and say, hey, play within this space and you're good.
Yep. Well, yeah, giving that opportunity, because that's where innovation happens. And again, that's where you're going to earn that seat at that table is by thinking outside the box that, no, it's not just black and white. I mean, yes, our role is we're still compliant. We need to make sure that we're keeping our community safe, but let's think strategy. If we need to build a new fancy piece of equipment that has a little bit different bells and whistles, how do we then build in food safety into that? So it's important to be part of those discussions, but not to just go right to, no, we can't do this. Let's talk about it. And then in the end, and that helps too. That helps get people to buy in, because even if it comes down to it, hey, we can't do anything, we're just going to have to do it this way. At least they feel like we've heard them. We try to find another solution, but we were not successful. And we just have to go back to doing, you know, what we had initially had said to. So,
yeah. I like to say to my teams, you know, and even now clients, you can really do anything. You can do anything with your business. You can introduce whatever products you want to introduce. Let's just talk about what are the guardrails and where you can play in. But, you know, it depends on how much money you want to spend, right? And how many facilities you want and those things, you know, like you really can introduce a new allergen. You really can make a different product. It's just, let's have a conversation about it. And I think that goes back to how do you promote food safety? That's a big piece where it's like, it's not a no, it's a, let's figure out how to do this while promoting food safety in the process.
Take back those analytical days of us being in our laboratories. I mean, that really is where we were pushing the limits, right? I remember my days of doing shelf life studies. And when we created a new product, like, okay, if we were to put this new ingredient in there, will this product still sustain? So again, that's where all that testing comes in. It's that proactive approach is, can we push the limit? Can we change the product? Can we make the product more successful?
There's so many good, like, just nuggets in here. And I always laugh because I'm like, wow, our time just flies. Okay, I'm curious, because out of all of this, what are one or two things that you hope that our audience takes away from our time together today?
Well, I think where you kicked off with the heart, take that heart back, wear it on your sleeve, be your true self, and make sure that people understand why you're in your role and have that passion. Because if you lead by example and have that passion and that drive, it's contagious. So I would say that's the first thing. And then maybe I'll have a few more, Jill, but build those partnerships, look outside of your little area. I think I share this in past talks, is be curious. Don't feel like just because you're in this sector that you can't learn about another things, because it might help connect the dots a little bit better. And then third, just make sure you're continuing to build those relationships to drive that culture. Because that you need your friends in the organization to help drive that. And attend events like this and be part of them, because there might be valuable things that you can share and vice versa. And again, when there's a situation and you might not have the resource in-house, you have other people out there in the food safety industry that can help out and provide solutions, or just be a sounding board as you're thinking through things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I love, because we talked about that actually before the show. Like, you don't have to do it all alone.
Yes.
And the more we can recognize that we can be ourselves, and inviting people in and giving ourselves permission to do that can just be a game changer for us.
Right. It is. Yeah. And with all these video conferences and social media, it's so much easier to stay connected, and you don't have to necessarily be at the same place. So leverage that technology.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, hey, we don't want to go away without doing our speed round questions.
All right.
Are you up for those?
I'm up for it.
Okay. These are just to be fun and light at the end, because we're, like you said, we bring our whole selves and we want to know a little more. So, all right, Rima, who is the funniest person you know?
I would say my husband, and that's probably why I married him. He has a great sense of humor and can misconstrue my words into some funny statement. And whenever, in our roles that we have, sometimes there's serious moments, and I'll just give him a call and just tell me a joke, and he has something like lined up right.
Oh, wow, nice.
Wow, on demand.
He's not a comedian though by trade. He's an engineer, so I don't know where that comes, but it's exciting to have that on a day-to-day.
That's awesome.
Humor makes it all go round.
Right, exactly.
All right, where would you love to go on vacation?
So with the chaos of being in food safety, sometimes it's nice not to have a crisis always, or thinking outside the box. So I love going to places, and this is probably from being from Massachusetts and living closer to an ocean. I love the ocean, and just listening, being in a place wherever it is in the world, and just having the sand and listening to the ocean waves. It just feels like you can just have a moment of silence.
I love that.
Very nice.
I love that.
Nice. All right. What should be a book that we should all add to our reading list?
So I had was given an opportunity when UNFI and Super Value had merged to be part of this Elevate Leadership program. I also encourage people to get involved in these leadership types of developments. And I had this author come and present during one of the sessions. His name is Michael Roberto, and there was a book called Unlocking Creativity. And again, it made me, and this was not just a food safety Elevate course, it was everybody, but it helped me think outside the box. So I would encourage, just based off of some of the recommendations I provided, to take a look at that. It's a great read, and helps you kind of break down some of the barriers that we might face as well.
All right. Unlocking Creativity?
Yes.
All right. I'll tag that so we get that later. Okay.
All right.
And the last one is, what would people say is your superpower?
Well, I was thinking about this, and when I talked about the boots on the ground and the visits that I like to do, I would say my superpower is I have this sense of smell. I can smell a problem from far away, and maybe it's just my years of experience. But
I love it.
and so I guess I have a sixth sense or a sense that's a little bit stronger than unusual. So I would say that's my superpower.
Oh wow!
That's
So
awesome.
they're like, Rima's coming. She's going to sniff out this problem. I love it.
Oh my gosh, Rima, we have so enjoyed having you on today, and thank you for spending this time with us and our audience so that we can just hear about your experience, and thank you for sharing the things that have gone well and some recommendations, because I've definitely taken away some things that I'm jotting down on the side, and I hope others are too.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about how we are better together, and we like to share our email, and we want people to reach out to us. If they want to get in touch with us and talk a little bit about food safety culture, about leadership mindset. We share tidbits, every week for people that's on our email list. So that's also great. But then we also like to connect you to our speakers if you need something or want to know more about something. That's why we have guests on the show, and why we're helping you build this network of people, right? Like Rima talked about, like this show is a part of your network. And so listening to these topics and learning from others, that is all about better together.
Absolutely. Yep. So connect with Rima on LinkedIn, or, if there's other ways, we will help connect as well. So
absolutely.
Yes.
Naga, great to see you as well out in the audience.
Well, thank you, everybody. And thank you for the opportunity to be on this. I had an awesome time, and the questions that you had made me even learn a few things too. So
see, all together. So awesome.
Yes.
All
Thank
right.
you, everyone. We will see you next week.
Yes, we will. Have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.
Bye.